Hey, I'm Hero of the New Fox Clan, and let's talk Deltarune. I just finished Chapter 2, as well as a replay of the first chapter, and after finishing all the different runs and trying to get as much different dialogue options and story elements that I could, I noticed that there's somewhat of a theme that I haven't really seen anyone else talk about. Now, I've got a million theories for this game, just like everyone else, no surprise, but today I just want to focus on this kind of like one point. The general idea of this theory is about how the dark world relates to the real world, and although I don't want to talk too much about the nature of the dark worlds themselves, I do want to point out that if you take events that happen in the dark world and combine them with the evidence that we have of the normal world, you can start to gain a few insights that tell us a lot about the main cast of characters. Now, when I say main cast, I'm mostly talking about Chris and his friends that go into the dark worlds, that being, Chris, Suzie, and Noelle. Those three are going to be the prime focus of all of my theories for today. But I mostly just want to focus on Noelle, specifically the character insights we get from her in the genocide route in Chapter 2. So Noelle in Chapter 2's genocide route has a lot of things going on, a lot of stuff related to the concept or the idea of getting stronger. The idea of getting stronger seems to be something that Noelle kind of like struggles with, telling herself that it's like natural, it's okay. She has to like reaffirm to herself that getting stronger is a good thing. Like it's almost as if she's really uncomfortable with the idea, but somebody has like implanted this idea in her head that it's like, okay, it's like the normal natural thing. However, in the dark world, the idea of getting stronger seems to like apply to what you imagine power gaming in a regular RPG would be like. Just defeating enemies and puzzles in a straightforward, direct, forceful way. Putting your own gain over any compassion for others. Noelle goes around freezing enemies, presumably killing NPCs, stealing. She's kind of just pushing herself past her comfort zone in like this bid for success and power, and that's kind of the idea of getting stronger. All of this seems to come from Chris, who continues to push Noelle in this direction if you play the genocide route, and that is like something that she really doesn't seem comfortable with throughout the entire run. While Chris in this route probably has negative motives in manipulating and controlling Noelle, I think that the way it's showcased to us, the player, actually is supposed to tell us a little bit about Noelle's personality and her relationship specifically with her mother. Noelle's mother is said to always be busy. She's the mayor, she lives in the largest house by far in the whole town. It's said by her husband even that she's always pushing Noelle, and Noelle herself mentions that her mother doesn't like being interrupted at work, kind of gives off the vibe of kind of like bordering on like half neglectful, half kind of like always pushing her. There's a lot of info that goes more into it, but the biggest thing is even her husband says to Chris, I believe, that Noelle's mother is very focused on work and success and the success of her child, even if she might go too far or come off as too cold and neglectful. Speaking of cold, it's said that Noelle's mother, the mayor, keeps her office very cold in contrast to Noelle's father, who refers to himself as a very hot guy. And when you do the genocide route, Noelle defeats all the enemies with like a cold/snow, ice, related moves and attacks. The stronger she gets in terms of the genocide getting stronger meaning, the more powerful the ice side of her gets. Now, I believe this is a metaphor for the more that Noelle disregards her compassion and general nice nature, she gets stronger in the way that her mother would consider being strong. She's more powerful in the dark world, she can kind of get whatever she wants, she's considered successful and strong in a way that actually makes Noelle herself very unhappy. This climaxes when Noelle seemingly kills Birdley in the dark world, a character who himself states that he's kind of just coasting off the success of Noelle because of his own insecurities, but also at one point was in direct conflict with Noelle over a spelling bee, in which she froze up on the final word, December, which is most likely the name of her dead sister, who she's said to have a very positive relationship with her, like her sister's kind of always there for her, very like big sister mode. In my theory, I imagine that the killing of Birdley is like synonymous with Noelle kind of like just giving up on Birdley as a friend. She has nothing to gain from him in terms of getting stronger. In the normal route, we would have helped Birdley come to terms with his insecurity, but in this genocide route, his feelings are kind of just disregarded, because all we care about is getting stronger. I feel like this is kind of like that classic trope where the parent just kind of forces their kid to be really successful, disregarding how they feel about things, as Noelle is clearly very unhappy and more unfeeling as we progress the genocide run. The Queen could also be a reference to her mother, as she's always capturing Noelle, trying to make her pawn, force her to do what she says. However, at the end of the normal route, Noelle is a lot better off. Like, she's come to terms with a lot of things in a healthy way, and ironically has actually become a stronger, more competent person on her own terms. The idea that these dark worlds are kind of like play pretend imaginary game that almost acts as like therapy for these characters is not really like something that isn't really hard to see. I think that's kind of like a big point of the game that isn't really like a secret or anything. But I think the genocide route with Noelle really goes to show that you can also use the Dark World to kind of play on the bad parts of people. Like, instead of going into the Dark World and fixing like whatever problem you have, you just kind of let that problem take over you and get like, you know, the bad ending. So next I want to talk about Suzie. So Suzie, revealed in chapter 2, is, you know, got some clear parental troubles going on, as when Toriel calls her, like tells her to call home to tell her parents that she's staying the night, she just doesn't do it, which, you know, either implies that she has like nobody to call, or she's like trying to hide something for her parents, but what I think is more likely is that she believes her parental figure wouldn't probably even care what she's up to, so there's no point in informing them of the sleepover anyways. Now, when you compare the idea that the Dark World crossovers, like, you know, they compare to the real world in general, we can take a look at the Dark World from Chapter 1 and make some new inferences. The same way that Noelle is the Chapter 2 focus, I think Suzie is kind of the real focus of Chapter 1. Like, Chris doesn't talk or anything, it's all about Suzie going through the most interpersonal changes revolving around opening herself up, trusting people, making friends, and being generally more compassionate. Now, how does she undergo these changes? Well, if we take a look at what happens in the game, a lot of it has to do with the character Lancer, who is in fact a kid who's constantly bullied and like abused by his parent. Although the King of Spades does like have some lines where he shows that he does love his kid, there's just a lot of scenes also where he's just a completely neglectful and abusive parent. The scene that really, like, I believe changes Suzie and solidifies her, like, change as a person is the scene in which she sees the king treating Chris the same way she herself was treating him at the start of the story, which is kind of like self-explanatory, but perhaps this is another kind of like level to this, where it's really supposed to showcase maybe this is how Suzie gets treated at home by like one of her own parents, and that's why she takes out her like frustrations and anger on all the other kids in the school. But then Suzie, seeing how she acts from a third perspective and how her actions affect people, decides she could like break this cycle, assuming this theory is true. You know, she can stop taking her pain out on other people around her simply because she just feels better as a person when she's like, you know, doing it in a lot healthier way. I mean, there's a lot of clues that Suzie comes from some sort of like broken home, but the biggest to me is definitely that slumber party thing. As well as like, you see a lot of times Toriel kind of refers to Suzie like, she gives off the vibe of like a caring parent who feels bad for her child's friend who probably doesn't have a great home life, so she kind of wants to act as, you know, like a second home. She kind of gives off that vibe, so I think that we could see a lot more of that going into the future. And then lastly, I want to talk about Chris. And, you know, with Chris, we know that Chris and Asriel have a major popularity disparity between them, with most of the people thinking Chris is a weirdo in the town, while everyone else pretty much idolizes Asriel. And then you can even go further just to look at the state of their rooms, implying that Asriel is just a lot more outgoing, socially cool, he's got trophies and stuff. So for Chris, I specifically feel like going into chapter 3, we know he's opened up a dark world at his own house, and my theory on this is that perhaps these like feelings of the disparity in his own home is what leads him to create a dark world in his own house to try to help himself. Similar to how like Suzie changes for the better, or Noelle and Birdley when you don't play the genocide route, I think that Chris is setting up chapter 3 as a kind of a way to maybe like give himself a therapy session where he can kind of like come to terms with what's going on in his life, because he doesn't really seem like he's got everything together. So I'm thinking that perhaps in chapter 3 we'll see why Chris is doing what he's doing, and if it relates to his like his mother and father's treatment of him, maybe he's like, you know, he's probably like adopted, as well as he's also a child of divorce, and you know, he's got probably some issues with his brother if that's like something he's insecure about. But I imagine it's not going to be hard to find connections that kind of like support these theories going into chapter 3. That's pretty much all I really wanted to talk about. You know, I've got a lot of other theories, and I don't think that like the connections between the dark world and the real world are really that much of a secret. I think there's a lot more actual secret mysteries underlying things going on. But I thought I would just start off by talking about this, because this is really what was on the forefront of my mind playing through chapter 2. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, I might make more content on Deltarune in the future. I definitely would like to go over my other theories on like Ralsei and why he's able to exist between dark worlds, how he relates to Asriel and Chris, as well as like Gaster references and Chara references, the bunker in the night, and like the main story and everything. So if you'd like to see some stuff like that, you know, leave a like, leave a subscribe, hit me up in the comments and I'll get back to you. I'm Hero of the New Fox Clan, and if enough of you guys watch this video, maybe I'll finally become a big shot. Thanks for watching.